Hey guys, tonight we take a slow step back to a time when no one in America called it America yet. The 15th century. The air smells different, denser, filled with smoke from sacred fires and the resin of pine trees. There are no highways, no sirens, no gas stations, but the land is far from silent. Nature here has teeth and claws. You're going to walk through forests that burn from within, watch rivers reverse their course, and hear stories whispered in shell beads and stone glyphs. Spoiler, you probably won't survive this dot, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is over there. Just curious if it's bedtime or breakfast for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey. Together, you're on a path not paved with concrete, but with lava-stiffened roots and bone-dry moss. It's the southeastern flank of Hawaii's Big Island, sometime around the early 1400s. Underfoot, the earth radiates heat. The forest, once lush and echoing with birdsong, is eerily quiet now. You've stumbled into the domain of Av-O-A. Lava flows so immense and enduring that even local spirits moved away in protest. Alvo named after a legendary fire deity who supposedly fled Kilauea's summit in shame, wasn't a fiery tantrum of a few days. This was a century-long event. It rolled on, ooze by relentless ooze, for possibly 60 years or more. Imagine living with molten rock advancing like a snail that never sleeps. Your village isn't crushed in one bang, it's gently, ominously, pushed into oblivion over decades. One backyard barbecue at a time, you cross a crust of cooled lava, black and crumpled like old bread. Beneath it, heat still pulses. The trees are half-burnt ghosts, some with trunks that look carved from glass. And above all this ruin, the smoky wind carries a faint smell charcoal and something oddly sweet, like guava turned to syrup and sin. Historians still argue whether Alvo's flow displaced entire settlements, permanently, or if people circled back afterward, like nervous raccoons testing an old campsite. What's certain is that this flow, with a volume topping 5.2 cubic kilometers, reshaped over 160 square miles of the Puna district. And it wasn't just the land this thing rewired. The spiritual circuitry. Imagine watching your ancestors' temple sink into molten stone and wondering if the gods just changed their mailing address. Some say the forest cried during the worst nights. Others claim owls Pueo flew inland in strange numbers. Warning, anyone who still listened. Fringe tailies from modern locals say there are sections of the hardened flow where compasses spin and GPS goes blank. Creepy. Yes. Probably explainable, but still creepy. You duck beneath a rock overhang, where ancient petroglyphs scratch out something you don't quite understand. Sun shapes, long-legged figures, curved lines like rivers or lava streams. Someone once stood here, watching the same creeping glow, carving their fear into the stone. They didn't have podcasts or sirens, just instinct and ritual. You touch one spiral with your fingertips and feel how shallow it is. Scratched in haste, maybe. Or scratched so often a message wore thin, the air rumbles. Not loud, just a deep stomach growl under your boots. It could be thunder, or something deeper. Kilauea isn't dramatic about her warnings. She doesn't shout. She simmers. You can't help but laugh, softly dark humor bubbling up. You're basically camping on the Earth's angry pressure cooker. That's a decision you'll reconsider in about 3 minutes. And speaking of poor decisions, you hear what sounds like rainfall, but it's warm, sticky. Drops fall from above, and when you step into the open again, you realize it's raining sulfur-laced steam. Your skin tingles. Not painful. Yet by now, you'd think ancient Hawaiians just packed up and fled. But nope. They adapted, built temporary shelters on lava rock, offered chance to peel, learned which areas hardened quickly enough to walk. They didn't conquer the flow, they coexisted with it. That's the thing about living on a volcanic island. Evacuation is just a fancy word for go uphill. One legend tells of a kahuna who danced barefoot across still cooling lava to retrieve a stolen object tossed there by a rival chief. The thief dared him. The kahuna didn't flinch, walked back, smoke hissing from his heels, the object in hand, and handed it back like he'd fetched it from a pond. "Your turn," he said, before limping away like a boss. You follow the edge of one lava trench deep as a subway tunnel, where the earth buckled and collapsed as molten rivers drained. Out, there's no guard rail, no signs, just a vertical drop into darkness, where echoes feel like whispers from a time before asphalt, before English, before anyone cared what longitude was. The strangest thing is how alive the ruin feels. Plants creep back in. Birds skitter along the sill. Edges, steam vents puff rhythmically, like breath from a sleeping beast. You're walking on the product of one of Earth's longest, slowest, most stubbornly beautiful tantrums. You round a corner and find a shrine-smooth lava rocks stacked in a deliberate triangle. Offerings, feathers, a gourd half full of rainwater, and a bundle of tea leaves. Someone was just here. Maybe this morning, maybe 500 years ago. Time's weird like that out here. You kneel for a second, not to pray, exactly, just to listen. Even your thoughts sound quieter among the black stones. And that's when it starts, a distant pop, like fireworks muffled by distance and humidity. Then another. The old flow is stirring. Somewhere deeper, magma creeps again, hunting for a weakness in the crust. And you're here, boots planted in a memory that might not be done burning yet. You trudge north now, leaving behind the scorched paths of Peel's playground and stepping into the open, endless lands of what we now call the American Southwest. But here, in the 15th century, it's a world of dry mesas and sun-bleached bones where wind snakes through red canyons, and the sky feels too big for any one person to carry. The sun doesn't just shine, it scours. And beneath that vast glare, you start to notice something strange. Emptiness. Once, these cliff faces were alive. Carved into rock, hundreds of feet above the valley floor, stood entire apartment blocks stone. Stacked on stone, windowless sanctuaries nestled into sandstone alcoves. The ancestral Pueblones lived here, in places like Mizaverde and Chaco Canyon. But now, in the dying days of the 1400s, you find pots left mid-firing, grinding stones abandoned mid-meal. Doors aren't just closed, they're missing. You run a hand along a wall still warm from the day's heat. Mud mortar crumbles under your fingers, and you wonder what made these people so skilled, so rooted walk away. Was it war? Spirits? A mass decision to just leave? Historians still argue whether the Pueblones were forced out by violence or chose to migrate peacefully. But what nearly everyone agrees on is this. The drought didn't help Dot. It wasn't a single dry year. It was a grinding, multi-decade thirst. From around 1275 to well into the 1400s, rainfall shrank. Rivers withdrew like shy snakes. The corn, the sacred food of life, withered. Entire canyons turned into ovens. Crops failed again and again, and no amount of prayer sticks could coax the clouds to stay. You crouch by what used to be an irrigation channel. It's dry now, dust choking the once smooth channel. But look closely, and you see black soot lining. Parts of it signs that someone tried to burn offerings there, not to irrigate the crops, to resurrect them. One quirky oral tale claims the sun grew angry with the people for sleeping past dawn, so it climbed higher into the sky each morning. To punish them, a petulant deity with no snooze button. The result? Long, unrelenting heat, day after day. Makes you think twice about sleeping in. You scale the steps carved into a narrow ridge, the kind of footpath where one wrong move sends you tumbling into a ravine, decorated with ancient arrowheads and old regrets. Up top, you find a tower half collapsed, lonely against the sky. Inside, soot stains lick the walls, black fingerprints from ancient fires. Defensive, maybe. Or ceremonial. Or both. You imagine the last days here. Grandmothers whispering over coals. Children watching the horizon for clouds that never come. And finally, quiet decisions made in council rooms. Not with swords, but with silence. Time to leave. Time to seek better water. You don't light a fire when there's nothing left to boil. A nearby kiva, a round ceremonial room dug into the earth, is open to the sky now. You climb down the ladder, rung smooth by hundreds of hands. Cool shadows wrap around you. The air shifts. It smells of cedar and ash and something older than language. You sit, cross-legged, and almost expect a voice to rise from the dirt dot instead. You get a mouse. It scurries across your foot like an afterthought. The sacred and the squeaky live side by side down here. Historians still don't fully understand. The sudden collapse of the great houses in Chaco. Some think the social system built on elite lineages and massive, ceremonial architecture just buckled under ecological pressure. Others whisper about revolts, spiritual upheaval, a people refusing to serve gods that let rivers die. You climb out and walk through a scatter of pottery shard sunburst patterns, turquoise glaze, tiny finger swipes from long-gone makers. The pottery doesn't just break. It shatters, and it sings when the wind gets it just right. A low chime, like regret with edges, and then you notice the footprints. Faint, but unmistakable. Not in stone, not in mud, but in absence. Patterns in. The way the grass grows differently where homes once stood. Paths still worn into stone, though the people who made them have long walked elsewhere. You're not the first to trace this emptiness. You won't be the last. You pause beside a tall juniper tree, twisted, ancient, resilient. It's alive barely, but in a place like this, that's a miracle. You touch its bark and whisper thank you, like the old ones might have. A way of honoring the land, even when it forgets how to feed you. Then you descend the far side of the cliff, down into the basin where today's sun hangs low, painting everything in syrupy gold. The heat still clings to your skin. Your water pouch is light. And up ahead, you see a long stretch of desert road carved into the sand. Faint grooves, not by cars, obviously. By people. Hundreds of them. Leaving, they didn't vanish. They didn't fall into ruin. They adapted, migrated, became the ancestors of today's Hopi, Zuni, and Pueblo peoples. But the silence they left behind in these canyons, that part still echoes, like a warning, like a lullaby sung through cracked lips. The sky starts to again, not because of sunset, but because of ash. You rub your eyes and taste soot on your tongue. You're standing now in the vast valley of Mexico, surrounded by glimmering lakes and rows of Chinampas floating gardens, meticulously arranged by the Mexica people, the future rulers of Tenochtitlan. It should be a scene of perfection, but it isn't. Above you looms Popocatépetl, the smoking mountain, and tonight it's having a mood. Thick plumes curl out of its conical summit, drifting like black lace across the horizon. The wind gusts, and for a moment, the entire valley smells like burning eggs and firewood that went bad. Down below, priests and peasants alike look skyward, some with fear, others with awe. You, being modern and not trained in obsidian divination, mostly just look for the nearest exit. Historians still argue whether the eruption that blanketed this valley in ash happened around 1440 or a little later. What they agree on is this: Popocatépetl, like all the best divas, had excellent timing. As the Mexica rose in power, building their lake-bound city with stunning ambition, the volcano reminded everyone who really shaped the land. You hear drums in the distance warning. Rhythms. The streets of Tenochtitlan ripple with panic, yet there's an eerie order to it. Priests ascend temple steps, incense billowing from clay burners. Warriors gather to shield canal routes. Farmers drag canoe loads of emergency maize toward storage. Pyramids. You duck under a colonnade as ash starts to fall light at first, like gray snow, and thicker, clumpier. It makes a sound when it hits thatch roofs. Pap, 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 like anxious applause. One local tale says Popocatépetl erupts when his lover, the snowy maiden Iztaccíhuatl, weeps from the afterlife. Her grief, apparently, can rearrange tectonic plates. Romantic and catastrophic. Your kind of bedtime story. You move with the crowd toward the nearest plaza, where a circle of dancers whirl through the falling ash like spirits conjured by smoke. Children cling to their mothers. Merchants shout for calm, trying to cover their goods with reed mats. Everyone's waiting for something clarity, prophecy, or at least a break in the coughing. You climb a stepped pyramid and look across the basin. The lake gleams dully beneath a gray veil. Far off, lightning flickers along Popocatépetl flank. You feel, not hear, a low hum, a pressure, a tightness behind the eyes and in the ribs, like the air is holding its breath. Then the roar comes. Not sharp or fast, but long and guttural. The volcano hurls a column of ash, so high it fades into the clouds. Rocks the size of papayas rain down. One thuds near you, sending shards of obsidian across the plaza. People scatter. You, ever the wise traveler, dive behind a basalt statue of Quetzalcoatl and pray it's been blessed recently. Fringe theories claim this eruption was a calculated act of divine communication, part of a larger cosmic realignment. Skeptical? Sure. But it did line up suspiciously close to the crowning of Montezuma. Nature might not cast votes, but it definitely crashes coronations. You crouch low as the ash thickens. It's in your hair, your sleeves, even your sandals. The dancers have stopped. Only the temple drummers continue slow, steady, like a heartbeat stubbornly continuing in the face of apocalypse. And in that moment, you catch a glimpse of something rare. People who don't scream or run, but ritualize their fear. They transform chaos into choreography. Popocatépetl calms by morning. Not because you asked nicely, but because volcanoes do what they want. The sky is a bruised yellow. The ground is blanketed in a few inches of ash. And over by the canals, farmers are already inspecting damage, poking their chinampas, shooing dazed birds off their drying maize. You pick your way through the city, now quieter, each footstep leaving a clean outline in the soft layer of fallout. People sweep rooftops, wash statues, rinse their faces in sacred wells. A merchant offers you a tamale wrapped in smoked leaves. You take it. It tastes like survival. At a temple's base, a priest draws symbols in the ash glyphs for wind, mountain, water. He looks at you, expression unreadable, and says, "The gods are hungry, but they are not cruel, only constant." You nod, pretending. You understand, which is basically what people have been doing around priests for centuries. You reach the edge of the causeway and look back at Tenochtitlan. Even under its soot-colored blanket, it gleams. This city won't fall today. Not from fire. Not yet. In the distance, Popocatépetl still smokes faintly, like a candle blown out, but not quite done glowing. You start walking again, along a cracked stone road that smells of sulfur and burnt offerings, knowing that the mountain may sleep again for decades, or decide to wake before dinner. As the wind shifts, carrying ash and incense eastward. You remember what a local child told you in a trembling voice. The volcano listens. You just have to know which silence is its voice. And you wonder, as you pass the last abandoned reed boat stuck in dried mud, whether that silence is ever truly safe. You've left behind the smoking valleys and sun-soaked temples, walking now through dense forests that hum with cicadas and secrets. The trees here grow thick around you. Oak, cypress, pine, and the air smells like damp earth and decaying leaves. You're somewhere near what will one day be the Mississippi River basin. But this isn't the river, you know. Not yet. This Mississippi flows wide, murky, and confident. You hear it before you see it alow. Endless current grinding through the woods, like a conversation you've walked in on too late. Then you reach the bank, and your jaw slackens. The water moves fast, but it's going the wrong way at first. You think it's a trick of the light, maybe the wind. But then a massive tree trunk floats past, bobbing with purpose, traveling upstream. The ground quivers. Not like a jolt, more like a giant beast rolled over in its sleep beneath your feet. And then it happens again, and again. The trees around. You start to creak and sway not from wind, but from the earth itself, flexing like it just remembered something painful. Historians still argue whether this was part of a long-term tectonic cycle or a cluster of unconnected quakes. But one theory posits that sometime in the mid to late 1400s, a seismic event, possibly an early foreshock of what would later become the infamous New Madrid quakes, rocked this entire region. And yes, it made the Mississippi run backward, temporarily but dramatically. You stumble as a wave of vertigo hits. The land beneath your boots shifts a little. A flock of birds launches from the trees in a screeching spiral. The wind dies, then the ground bucks. Like a horse that's had enough. Trees tilt. The river surges. You grab a sapling and hold on as the world rearranges itself in ways that violate your contract with gravity. Then the strangest thing. Out of the soil, jets of sand begin to erupt, tiny fountains shooting up, sizzling with moisture and grit. These are sand blows or sand volcanoes. Quirky, dangerous, and common in powerful earthquakes. It's like the ground's pores are suddenly sweating. And honestly, it looks like something out of a low-budget fantasy movie. You crawl toward higher ground, which is generous to call higher when the whole area is flatter than a pancake left on a parking lot. In the distance, trees have fallen into zigzag patterns, some split in half, others buried in the riverbank mud. You pass a cracked canoe, empty, its paddle lying several feet away like someone dropped it mid-sprint. The nearby Cahokia Mounds rise gently in the misty distance, ancient earthworks that once marked the heart of a thriving civilization. But even by the 1400s, the city was shrinking, perhaps from disease, resource collapse, or yes, seismic instability. Historians still debate whether tremors like these helped tip the balance, turning ceremonial centers into ghost hills. You pass an old mound temple, cracked but still standing. Its base has split open, revealing the packed earth inside. No gold, no skeletons, just soil, neatly layered. Like a memory cut in half, one old legend from the area speaks of the Earthshaker, an invisible spirit that stomps across the land in a dance no one dares mimic. They say he travels with thunder in one hand and silence in the other. When he visits, trees lie down, and the river forgets which way to go. You walk carefully now, avoiding fissures that open like crooked grins in the underbrush. The air smells odd, sour, and sweet, like roots torn loose and something prehistoric. Your boots squish into soft patches where groundwater's risen up in bubbles. You don't stay long. This isn't land anymore. It's soup pretending to be land. And just as suddenly, everything calms. The birds return. The river stills, resuming its usual flow like nothing happened. But you know better. A quiet river, is not always a safe one. Sometimes it just ran out of things to flip over. You climb a bald ridge and look down at the floodplain. What used to be forest now ripples like dough in a pan. Ponds have appeared where there were none. Whole swaths of earth now lean subtly to the west. It's like someone tried to fold the land and gave up halfway. Down below, you find a small ring of stone markers, likely a native ceremonial site. 3 of them have toppled. 1 remains. You sit beside it, fingers tracing its moss-covered edge. The stone hums with the heat of the quake, or maybe just your imagination playing tricks. You're not sure anymore. When the land itself moves, your sense of certainty goes with it. And now you understand why some tribes refuse to build permanent homes too close to the Mississippi's banks. Why their stories always include shifting rivers, buried lodges, and vanished trails. The earthshaker doesn't knock. He lets himself in. You drink from your waterskin and watch the last of the sand boils settle. Frogs croak in the new pools. A raccoon mud-caked and dazed wanders past without acknowledging you. Everyone's just trying to get their bearings again. And as you rest beneath a tree that somehow didn't fall, you wonder how many other times the earth has danced like this, without leaving behind headlines or hashtags. Just bent trees, stunned. Rivers and the memory of motion locked into trembling ground. The air grows thinner as you climb, and each breath feels like sipping through a straw made of stone. You've traveled south, now high into the Andes, where Cusco lies nestled like a jewel set into a crown of jagged peaks. But tonight, the city doesn't sparkle. Tonight, it trembles. You step through narrow stone alleyways, lined with walls built so precisely that not even a knife blade could slide between the blocks. These aren't just any walls. These are Inca walls. They lean, ever so slightly inward, designed to flex, to absorb tremors. And tonight, those ancient engineers are getting tested. The ground gives a warning twitch. Not enough to throw you off balance, but just enough to make every hair on your arms rise in agreement. The walls creak no sound, really, just a kind of pressure your ears pick up. Then a low, grinding rumble begins beneath your feet. You freeze, and the city holds its breath. When the shaking comes, it's not a brief jolt. It's a rolling, growling, slow-motion convulsion. You stagger into a courtyard where priests in long woven robes are clutching at sacred objects, whispering Quichua prayers. The massive stones of a nearby Sun Temple Coricancha shudder visibly. 1 block slides half an inch out of alignment, groans, then slams back like it changed its mind. Historians still argue whether this 15th century quake was a single massive event or a series of smaller tremors over several decades. What's clear is that the Inca took each one as a message from Inti, their sun god, not a love letter. A warning dot as you duck under a slanted archway. You hear stone crashing somewhere behind you. The dust kicks up fast, thick as flour, and just as choking. Visibility vanishes. You stumble into someone, an old woman with ash on her cheeks and a bundle of maize under one arm. She looks you over, grunts, and vanishes into the fog like a mountain spirit in sandals dot. Then comes the aftershock. A violent, whip-fast shake that knocks over a statue of Virakaka. You dive behind a granary wall, which miraculously holds. The ancient masons, those geometry-obsessed geniuses, knew their craft. No mortar, just gravity and craftsmanship. You want to hug every single one of them. Some scholars suggest the Inca restructured Cusco after this quake, redesigning it in the shape of a sacred puma. Whether it was a rebuilding effort or a cosmic flex is unclear, but you can't deny the symbolism. A city that survives the teeth of the mountains earns the right to look like a predator. One fringe legend whispers that the quake cracked open a cave beneath Sacsayhuaman Fortress, revealing golden bones of an earlier civilization. that the Inca quickly resealed. Was it a metaphor? A bedtime story? Or a dirty little secret buried beneath polished stone? You push forward into the ruins of a schoolhouse, where young nobles once learned astronomy and quipu record-keeping. The roofs collapsed, but the walls still stand, defiantly slanted inward like warriors, racing for another blow. Scattered across the floor are broken knotted cords Inca bookkeeping tools, now tangled like nerves. Outside, you see llamas bleeding nervously in the fields, the stone terraces trembling under their hooves. Cornfields tilt sideways. A canal has burst, sending water frothing down the cobbled streets like a liquid stampede. And yet, amid all this, a flute. Someone is playing a reed flute. Off-key, persistent, almost mocking. You follow the sound and find a barefoot boy perched on a broken staircase, dust in his hair, playing to a terrified chicken clutched in his lap. You ask if he's okay. He shrugs, keeps playing. It's his way of arguing with the mountain. You can't help but sit beside him for a moment, breathing in the mingled scent of stone dust and highland rain. The ground has stopped shaking for now, but the silence it leaves behind is taut, waiting to be disturbed. Back on your feet, you make your way uphill towards Sacsayhuaman, the great fortress with boulders the size of box trucks. The scale is staggering. Some stones weigh over 100 tons, yet they're fit together like puzzle pieces made by gods on their lunch break. And here's the miracle. They held. Even in the quake, they held. You run your fingers along one interlocking edge, tracing the odd, lumpy geometry. The ancients didn't do corners and symmetry. They did curves, tight seams, and wobbly lines that made the whole thing shockproof. Who needs rebar when your stones snuggle each other? From the fortress top, you look down at Cusco. Fires dot the horizon like constellations in reverse. Smoke curls upward, and the valley flickers as people gather by torchlight. Some rebuild, some mourn, some just stand and wait to see if the world will twitch again. And far beyond the city, past the mountain spines and cloud shadows, the sun begins to rise. A fat orange disk that makes the mist glow gold. Inti's eye, reopening. You take a long breath. The stone beneath your boots still hums faintly, a memory of motion. You walk down the slope slowly, each step stirring a little dust cloud as if the land itself were exhaling. Now you stand barefoot on soft volcanic soil, toes sinking into the land like the roots of a frightened tree. The air is thicker here, humid, metallic, and the scent is something between wet ash and fermenting fruit. This is Lake Atitlan, deep in the Guatemalan highlands. The lake, cradled by steep volcanic walls, is impossibly serene right now, which is exactly what makes you uneasy. It's 1469, and the twin volcanoes Toloman and Atitlan have stopped brooding. They've decided tonight is for fireworks. You feel it first in your chest, a deep percussive pulse like a drum, hit too hard, muffled by mountains. Then the ground lurches. Water slaps violently against the lake's edges. Birds explode. From the trees, you spin and see it glowing red specks raining down the side of the volcano, like angry fireflies on a sugar high. Locals knew this was coming. They always do. Oral traditions don't forget. They've been watching the patterns in animal migrations, in cloud formations, even the dreams of their elders. And for days, things haven't felt right. The birds nested low. The dogs refused to bark. The wind carried a sulphurous rasp that made old women whisper blessings into their maize dough. Historians still argue whether this was a they-for eruption or something more modest. But for the people farming maize and squash on the terraced slopes around the lake, it was biblical and terrifying. You sprint uphill, past a farmer clutching his son with one hand and dragging a squealing pig with the other. Above you, Incandescent rocks arc through the sky like comets, hissing as they vanish into the lake or explode against the rocks. Each one slams down with a wet thunk or a sharp crack, leaving behind steam and fear. One flaming boulder hits a nearby field and sets the night alight. It ignites a patch of dry thatch in a flash. You can see outlines of people trying to stamp it out with woven mats, others just fleeing. The flames dance fast here, fueled by panic and dry vegetation. A local elder shouts something about the Fire Lord awakening for tribute. Fringe beliefs tie each volcano to a spirit, sometimes loving, sometimes petty. This one? Definitely on his bad side tonight. And then comes the rain, not water, but hot ash. It falls gently at first, coating your shoulders like a warm snow that hates you. Then it thickens, choking, gritty. You cover your nose with your sleeve. Every breath tastes like a burned pinnacone. Still, even through the chaos, the Maya remain. Remarkably calm, their movements are swift but purposeful. They've rehearsed this before. They know when to run, when to chant, and where to gather. You follow a group of them to a high rock outcrop overlooking the lake. The view is horrifyingly beautiful. From here, you watch as magma pours from fissures like syrup from a god-sized jar. It doesn't rush. It oozes calculated, arrogant. And when it touches the lake, it sends up a curtain of steam so thick it blocks the stars. Somewhere nearby, a temple bell rings, not in warning, but in ritual. This isn't just destruction. It's communication. You sit beside a woman cradling a bundle wrapped in cloth. She's not crying. She's humming softly, eyes closed. You realize she's singing to the volcano, not pleading thanking it for letting them live this long. One scholar theorized that many ancient highland communities didn't view eruptions as curses, but as resets. The Fire Lord clears the board so life can begin again. And here's the kicker. They even scheduled ceremonies around likely eruption patterns. Now that's faith. Or extreme optimism. Lightning slices across the sky, illuminating the soot-choked landscape. You see blackened trees, curled like paper scrolls. A stone shrine stands untouched nearby, still ringed with flower offerings. You wonder if the gods are just good at aiming dot, then dash just as suddenly, the eruption slows. The lava loses its shine, cooling into cruel, dark crusts. The ashfall fades. The mountain exhales its last snarl and goes still. You hear sobbing, but also laughter. A group of teenagers dances barefoot in the fresh ash, throwing handfuls at each other like it's snow. You resist the urge to join, but your foot accidentally kicks a puff into your own face. You taste grit and fate. Come morning, the lake glows green again, its surface eerily smooth. But everything smells scorched. Canoes are half sunken along the shoreline. Fish bob belly up near the reeds. And yet people are already wading in, washing soot from their arms. Beginning again, you help gather stones to repair a collapsed wall. A small girl offers you a charred piece of sweet bread still edible, surprisingly. She says the volcano only took what it needed. This time, she adds with the gravity of someone who's definitely 7 but feels older. You pass by blackened, cropped terraces, trails of ash leading down the mountain like fingerprints. The people will rebuild. They always do. They don't fight the volcano. They live with it. Kind of like accepting a cranky uncle as part of the family. One last glance at Adatlan's twin peaks shows them cloaked in clouds again. Quiet, innocent. For now, you start walking west, soot sticking to your calves, the air still tinged with the memory of molten things. Your ears ring from the silence that follows a storm. And deep beneath the cooled crust, the Fire Lord snores again, plotting his next temper tantrum. You've wandered far north again, past whispering forests and icy rivers, where the stars glint like ancient teeth and time itself seems to slow. The night is cold, bitter, and crystalline. Every breath curls out like a ghost looking for a new home. You're in the Great Lakes region now, sometime in the late 1400s, standing beneath towering conifers that creak like old ships. And above you, something isn't right. There's a hum. Not from the earth this time, but from the air. It tingles along your scalp, dances down your spine. You tilt your head, and the sky pulses. No clouds, no moon. Just a sudden, eerie light greenish, white hot, and then without warning, a flash so bright you drop to your knees and cover your face. A second later, the boom hits. Not like thunder. This one punches your chest, rattles your teeth, and knocks pine needles loose in a flurry of trembling rain. You've just witnessed what some scholars believe was an aerial meteor burst, a superbolide that exploded somewhere over the boreal forests east of modern-day Lake Superior. And you are way too close for comfort. The fireball doesn't touch the ground. It detonates mid-air, a cosmic sucker punch that turns night into a noontime nightmare for a few gut-churning seconds. Trees snap, ice fractures. Birds, those that survive, spiral out of the sky. Then comes the heat. A wave of it, thick and unnatural, rolling through the woods like breath from a very annoyed star. Historians still argue whether this was the same event that left magnetic anomalies in the Ontario Basin, or merely one of several unexplained impacts remembered in tribal lore. But here's the eerie part. Multiple oral traditions, separated by vast distances, all describe the night the sky cracked open. You stumble toward a clearing, heart hammering, skin still buzzing. The trees around you look scorched, not burned to ash, but singed, blackened at the tops like they've been very rudely toasted. The undergrowth steams. A rabbit darts past you, ears pinned flat, eyes wild. It doesn't even blink at your presence. Everyone's in survival mode now. You find a stone circle, ancient and overgrown, its center now glowing faintly with heat. One rock is cracked clean through, still smoking slightly. You touch it. Bad idea? Your fingers hiss. You suck them into your mouth and mutter something unprintable. PG-13, but barely. Local Ojibwe stories speak of a sky serpent that tried to devour the moon and was struck down by Nanabozo, the trickster. Its broken body, they say, fell in burning pieces that scorched the earth and taught the people to never forget to honor the stars. You're not saying it was aliens, ... But also, you're not saying that. Somewhere nearby, you hear voices hushed, rhythmic. You follow them and find a group of elders kneeling around a smudge bowl, fanning the smoke over their faces. They're chanting softly, words slipping through languages you don't know, but still somehow understand. It's a thank you and a hey, warning and a memory all rolled into one. They've seen this before. Not exactly this, but they know that when the sky makes a sound like creation in reverse, it's time to pay attention. You look up again, and the stars are back. Same constellations, same quiet confidence. But your brain can't quite trust them now. You've seen them scream. Later, you cross into a grove where trees lie in a strange radial pattern, all blown outward from a central point. The soil is glassy here, laced with tiny black beads, impactite, maybe, or just extremely upset dirt. Your compass, if you had one, would be spinning. Instead, you rely on moss and gut instinct, and hope neither is lying tonight. A fox follows you for a while, staying just out of reach. Its eyes glow not red, but pale blue, reflecting a sky that still hasn't calmed down. You whisper, "Not tonight," and it vanishes like smoke. You come upon a frozen lake, thin, fractured, steaming faintly. The ice is covered in fallen branches, shards of bark, and one charred canoe. You walk its edge, careful not to make the wrong kind of history dot. And as you find a dry patch beneath an overhang of rock, you settle in, pulling your cloak tighter. The cold returns, gentle and familiar, like the earth apologizing for the skies. Behavior. Your eyes trace the horizon where dawn will eventually come. But for now, the forest holds its breath. And high above, invisible to you now, some chunk of ancient debris continues its journey silent, earned out, trailing legends behind. It like a comet's ghost. Your boots crunch on salt-dusted stones as you step out onto the rocky coastline of what will one day be called Peru. But here, in the 15th century, the locals know it as a sacred edge, a place where land and sea share secrets. The breeze carries a cold sting, and the surf speaks in a guttural dialect, rhythmic, ancient, a little ominous. You're not the only one listening. You stand atop a bluff overlooking the Pacific, watching fishermen pull in woven reed boats. Their faces are pinched with something more than fatigue. Something's wrong with the water. It's too high, too fast, and the seabirds are gone. Then the world shivers. Not a quake you feel in your feet, yet but a distant pulse that travels up through your spine like a rumor you don't want to believe. The waves hesitate, suck back, bearing more seabed than seems fair. The fishermen freeze. A dog whines, and then it hits. From the ocean, a wall of water races inland, not curling. Like a surfer's dream, but rising, like a tide that's had enough of your nonsense. The sound is indescribable. Water and wind and boulders grinding together, screaming like old gods waking up grumpy. You sprint inland, following shouting locals who barely glance at you. Everyone knows what's coming. A seaquake, a massive offshore tremor, possibly centered near what we now call the Nazca Trench, has just shoved part of the Pacific floor upward. That means tsunami. A big one. Historians still argue whether this event occurred in 1470 or closer to 1475. What they do agree on is that the central Peruvian coast was walloped by something powerful enough to change trade patterns, destroy coastal shrines, and leave behind archaeological layers of sea silt where only cornfields should have been. You reach a higher ridge just in time to watch the wave obliterate everything below. Villages vanish in seconds. Palm fronds explode into splinters. A fishing net launches skyward like a ghost. The water churns inland, carrying boats, livestock, and a very surprised llama. It's a surreal moment. You're watching geography. Get edited live dot, and then a second wave. Not as tall, but faster. It cuts deeper inland, shoving debris through the remains of homes and temples. You spot a stone pillar tumble like a child's toy. Clay pots shatter on the backs of the fleeing. Tide. One sacred idol, a fish-headed figure, floats briefly, then sinks. You catch your breath beside a cracked altar ringed with candle stubs and seaweed. Someone must have lit them before the surge. The flames are gone, but the wax still clings stubbornly to the stone. Behind you, elders chant in Quechua, their voices mixing with the sound of receding water. One of them pours maize beer chicha onto the earth in offering. They don't scream. They negotiate. Fringe accounts from later chronicles say this tsunami destroyed entire fishing clans and caused the Inca to reevaluate their coastal expansion. Some even suggest the quake was interpreted as a punishment for failing to properly honor Mama Kosha, the sea goddess. The irony? Many of her temples were the first to be swallowed. You follow the survivors inland, their arms full of what they could carry: tools, herbs, sacred feathers. One man carries only a broken paddle and a flute. He doesn't speak, but he plays softly as he walks, each note a question flung toward a very soggy cosmos. You pass through an abandoned settlement, now slathered in seafoam and kelp. Roofs dangle from one corner. Chickens peck cautiously at salt-caked reeds. A single alpaca, soaked and shivering, stands atop a ruined storage house, looking like it regrets several life choices. Closer to the river mouth, you notice the ground has changed. It's rippled not like mud, but like the earth itself got tired of being flat. Sand boils have burst in random patches. Trees lean backward, as if the wave pushed even the roots halfway to Bolivia dot. And in the eerie calm that follows, something else emerges silence. No birds, no insects. Just wind and the faint squelch of seawater retreating into wounds it never should have made. You help a group of villagers carry what's left of a ceremonial drum out of the muck. They nod thanks, and one girl offers you a shell pendant. You try to refuse. She presses it into your hand anyway. The ocean watches, she says. You're not sure if that's meant to comfort you or keep you up at night. The sky shifts, and the sun reappears in a cloudless blue above a very changed coastline. What used to be village paths are now shallow channels. What once was shoreline is now debris-strewn marsh. And above it all, the bluff where you first stood now feels like a lucky guess. You look out over the glittering Pacific, still now, pretending nothing happened. And you understand why people here always built with reed and rope, never trusting the sea to stay in one shape too long. The tsunami didn't just reshape the land. It reshaped belief. Sacred spaces moved inland. Salt water was treated more carefully. The sea wasn't just a provider anymore. It was a negotiator, and sometimes a thief. You leave the pendant around your neck, the shell warm from your hand. As you head east toward drier altitudes, the distant roar of the ocean fades behind you, but the rhythm of its rage still beats in your ears. You step carefully across jagged black rock, crusted and cracked like an ancient puzzle half finished by giants. The air is sulfur-sharp, throat-stinging, heavy enough to sit on your shoulders like a damp wool cloak. You're back on Hawaii's big island sometime in the late 1400s, and this time you're staring directly into the mouth of madness, Halema Umayu crater, the summit of Haklauii. But this isn't the polite smoking pit you might know from postcards. This is the collapse, a volcanic tantrum of legendary scale. One moment the land is just grumbling, like it has indigestion. Then it gives way. The crater floor sinks. Not a polite slump, mind you, but a thunderous cave-in, as though the gods have pulled a cosmic drain plug. A yawning pit opens beneath your feet. You jump back just in time as entire swaths of forest, stone, and possibly a few confused birds drop into the void. Historians still argue whether this massive collapse happened abruptly or in a series of dramatic pulses. Either way, the 15th century transformation of Kauai's summit was seismic, enough literally and culturally to be etched into chants, petroglyphs, and stories that ripple forward to today. From your new, not dead vantage point, you watch as steam shoots skyward like geysers possessed. The ground trembles again, a deep bass you feel in your teeth. Lava doesn't flow in elegant streams. It explodes, sometimes sideways, flinging globs of molten stone through the trees. It's chaos. It's gorgeous. It's absolutely not in any travel brochure. Locals call this sacred place Halema Umayu, House of Peel, and today the Lady of Fire is not in a good mood. A fringe tale insists she had an argument with her sister Haiyaka, and in her rage, cracked the crater wide open to swallow the forest that dared bloom without her blessing. Sounds petty, but hay lava goddesses aren't known for emotional restraint. You skirt the rim carefully. The edge looks solid, but crumbles like burnt toast. Below, the pit churns with glowing orange veins magma, fresh from Earth's belly, swirling and bubbling as if trying to form thoughts. You get the distinct impression it doesn't like you. Suddenly, the wind shifts. A plume of sulfur-rich gas envelops you, burning your nose, watering your eyes. You stumble, coughing, reaching for a scarf that does little more than give the gas something to cling to. Somewhere nearby, you hear the unmistakable scream of a nangoose, Hawaii's sacred and endangered bird, fleeing the scene like it forgot it could fly. You manage to crawl toward a high outcrop of Pahoe, Hoi lava smooth, ropey, deceptively walkable. Perched there, you finally get a wider view of the destruction. It's not just a hole. It's a reformation. A new summit caldera, deep and unstable, still forming in real time. Smoke rises in fingers. Trees tilt toward the pit as if hypnotized. It's not a landscape anymore. It's a birth scene, bloody and loud. You spot an ancient ahu, a small altar of stones that somehow remains upright amid the chaos. Someone maybe a week ago, maybe 100 years left offerings, flower lays, kukui, nuts, a lock of braided hair. You crouch beside it and place your hand on the warm stones. A moment of stillness. Even Peel has pauses between verses. Then, boom, a chunk of the far wall collapses, sending an avalanche of rock into the crater. The splash of magma is instant and furious. You throw yourself flat as a shower of cinders pelts the rim, hissing into the trees like angry wasps. That's your cue to keep moving. You descend through newly scorched forest, the ground still crackling underfoot. Trees lean at impossible angles. Some are still on fire. Others look perfectly healthy until you touch them, and they crumble into charcoal. Ash coats your legs like powdered sugar from hell. Strange science. Geeks centuries from now will study this event and find that the collapse altered not just the landscape, but the water table, the local climate, even migratory bird patterns. But you, in this moment, are mostly concerned with not being melted. You pass a lava tube still steaming, its ceiling black and smooth like obsidian. A breeze rushes out from it, warm and whispering. You don't go in. You don't need to. The ground itself is story enough by twilight. The crater glows behind you like a second sun refusing to set. Villagers begin to gather at the ridge, some praying, some chanting, others simply watching in reverent silence. You join them. The sounds of the collapse echo through your bones. Someone begins a chant soft, rhythmic, a lullaby for fire. You don't understand the words, but the cadence is clear. Surrender, survive, repeat. One child reaches for your hand, her fingers sticky with ash. You hold on, because what else can you do? As night falls, the crater pulses gently, no longer roaring, but simmering, thoughtful. You lie back on the warm rock, staring at stars slowly pushing through the smoky veil. The earth is quieter now, not peaceful, just paused. And as sleep nearly takes you, one final tremor rolls beneath your body, gentle this time. A reminder, a heartbeat. The land is never still. It just pretends to be. The cold here bites deeper than usual. You're standing beside a frozen river, surrounded by towering pines, their branches draped in thick snow. It should be peaceful, almost postcard-worthy, if not for the distant roar growing steadily louder. Something's coming, and it's not bringing hot cocoa. This is glacial country, far up in what will one day be called Alaska. But in the 15th century, it's simply known as home to various indigenous communities who've lived with the rhythms of ice and thaw for generations. They know every sound a mountain makes, and they also know when it starts making new ones. It's time to run. You're looking down at what used to be a long, steady glacier-fed river. Something's changed. A valley feels too quiet. The ice beneath your boots vibrates, ever so slightly. Then a hawk above screams, not a melodic call, but a shrill, panicked get-out-now screech. And then the flood begins. A roar, like 1,000 waterfalls arguing at once, bursts from upstream. The glacier has broken, not melted burst. A massive ice dam has failed. unleashing a wall of water the size of a small city. You can't even process the scale before it's already reshaping the landscape. Historians still argue whether this was a known Julehalpa glacial lake outburst flood in a major Alaskan drainage system or one of many undocumented local collapses. But indigenous oral traditions from several groups, including the Tlingit and Athabascan peoples, describe a time when the river rose like a beast, sweeping away forests, animals, and entire encampments. You turn and run. Trees crack like matchsticks behind you. The sound of the rushing water isn't just wet, it's sharp. It carries stones, chunks of ice, torn-up trees, possibly even a moose or two, and it's all headed your way. You don't look back. There's nothing back there, but consequences. Your boots hit rocky ground just as the slope begins to rise. You scramble up a ledge, hands slipping on frost-covered lichen. The water races beneath you seconds later, taking with it everything in its path. Bark, bone, bits of snow hut, entire logs, and your sense of safety. From your perch, you watch the wall of debris surge down the valley like it's late for something. The sound alone could fracture glass or hearts. It lasts longer than you'd expect, a full 15 minutes of relentless, boiling chaos. And then, like a tantrum finally burned out, the flow slows. It doesn't stop, just shifts to sulking. You blink. Everything below you is gone, flattened. A brown scar cut through a white forest. A strange, almost sacred silence follows. A few crows flutter overhead, watching like they've seen this before, and maybe they have. A few brave snowshoe hares peek out from burrows, looking like confused marshmallows. Downstream, you find fragments of what used to be a camp, crushed baskets, splintered toboggans, a cedar carving face down in the silt, and beside it, half buried, in frozen mud, a carved mask eyes wide, mouth open in surprise or song. You don't touch it. It feels like the wrong kind of invitation. Fringe stories and local traditions speak of glacier spirits massive, slow-walking beings who sleep within the ice. When they turn in their dreams, the mountains shift. When they wake, well, you've just seen what happens. You follow the edge of the floodplain, careful with each step. The mud here is still wet, the silt filled with strange colors, deep charcoal, flecks of blue and red, signs of the minerals carried from the glacier's secret guts. It's like someone spilled a geological stew across the land. You pass a salmon. Drying rack still standing, strangely untouched. The fish are gone, but the structure remains. A minor miracle. Or a major warning. You find tracks fresh. A small group of survivors moving uphill. Their footprints are wide and steady, not panicked. You follow, more out of hope than reason. Eventually, you crest another ridge and find them gathered around a fire ring, rebuilding. Already, no complaints, just quiet work. They look up as you arrive, and one elder nods as if to say, "You too, huh?" They offer you broth made from herbs and roots pulled from a thawed patch nearby. It tastes sharp and smoky, grounding. You sit with them, and no one speaks of the flood, not yet. Instead, they talk about the stars, the upcoming moon cycle, and how the geese haven't come back early this year. Not fear, just observation. Like scientists wrapped in fur and quiet wisdom. Someone begins to drum. The rhythm is slow, syncopated with the crackling of the fire. A low chant follows about rivers that remember, ice that dreams, and the need to listen more closely to snow. You lean back against a rock, watching steam rise from the bowl in your hands. The valley below is no longer a place. It's a scar, a memory, a boundary. Tomorrow, the people here will begin again, new shelters, fresh hunting paths, different stories. The glacier will still be there, colder than any grudge. And you'll move on, carrying this one with you. Because floods don't just wash away villages. They wash away the illusion of permanence. And what's left behind? A deeper respect for the parts of the world that don't care if you're ready or not. Now the breeze carries salt, heavy and damp, like a blanket wrung out over your shoulders. You're back in the tropics deep in the Caribbean Sea, standing on a narrow stretch of sand where palm trees bend in submission to winds that haven't yet begun to scream. It's the summer of 1494, and you're on the Corn Islands, a lush dot off the coast of what we now call Nicaragua. You hear it first in the stillness. No birds, no insects, just the ominous quiet before an orchestra's first strike. The sky, once postcard blue, now churns with gray, low-slung clouds gathering like a jury. The air tastes off-charged, electric, like nature is bracing for impact. You're not the only one sensing it. The Spanish ships anchored offshore are rocking harder than usual. The crew led by a certain Christopher Columbus has stopped pretending this is a casual stopover. Historians still argue whether this 1494 tempest was a full-fledged hurricane or an unusually violent tropical cyclone. But its effect on the early explorers and the indigenous people who'd been here far longer was unmistakable. It was one of the first recorded European encounters with the true wrath of a Caribbean storm. And spoiler alert, they were not. Ready, the wind arrives like a thief, stealing heat and replacing it with dread. You duck behind a palm as it howls overhead, dragging sand, leaves, and possibly a coconut or two with it. The Spanish scramble to secure their sails, barking commands no one can hear over the rising roar. Then the rain hits. It doesn't fall. It attacks. Sideways, dense, sharp as gravel. You're soaked within seconds, and not in the refreshing tropical shower sense. This is the kind of wet that feels personal. You run for shelter and find a cave-like alcove under a rock ledge, just in time to watch the palm trees start to bend. Not sway bend. Some snap clean in half, flung like javelins. Into the surf, the sea turns feral. Waves rise from every direction, chewing the shoreline into soup. One Spanish ship breaks anchor and smashes against the reef, its hull cracking like a dry bone. You catch a glimpse of sailors clinging to the mast, eyes wide with panic, mouthing prayers that dissolve in the wind. Indigenous villagers have long since retreated inland. They saw the signs before anyone else, birds flying inland, strange halos around the moon, restless fish in the shallows. They knew the name before Columbus did. He reckoned a word so fierce it stayed that Taino believed it to be the name of a storm deity, angry, spinning, and vengeful. And tonight he's in full form. You duck lower as debris flies past your hiding spot planks of wood. Fishing baskets. What might be a hat? The wind sounds like it's laughing, not joyfully. More like a god amused by your survival odds. Somewhere nearby, lightning strikes. A white flash followed by a crack that seems to split the sky. For a moment, everything is lit up in frozen terror. Trees bent double, the sea lunging toward the land. A group of sailors trying desperately to haul their lifeboat to higher ground. Then darkness again, then more wind. You close your eyes and hope the rock above you holds. When dawn finally breaks, the storm has vanished as abruptly as it came. The sun is back, feigning innocence, casting golden light on a scene of pure wreckage. Boats splintered, shorelines redrawn, trees stripped of every leaf. The sand looks like it's been clawed at by giants. You step carefully into what used to be a trail, now a river of mud and broken fronds. The Spanish look shell-shocked. One man sobs over a compass. Another mutters about omens and curses. Columbus himself, reportedly, took the storm as a sign, divine or otherwise, that his journey would not be smooth sailing. Spoiler, it wasn't, And the locals? Already rebuilding. Already sweeping, fixing, reweaving thatch roofs. Hurricanes don't surprise them. They're woven into the calendar, the prayers, even the architecture. You pass a fallen tree, where someone has propped up a carved idol, now wearing a garland of wet flowers. A child dances nearby in ankle-deep water, laughing. Just days ago, that same patch of ground was under 6 feet of storm surge. You help drag driftwood from a collapsed hut, pausing to wring out your tunic. A woman pats your back and offers you a handful of roasted yucca. It's cold, but tastes like survival. By nightfall, the island glows again, torches flickering, fires smoldering, voices rising in cautious celebration. You sit with them, watching the stars return, brighter than before. The constellations look unchanged, but you aren't. Not after that. One sailor mutters that he now understands why the locals worship the storm as a god. You nod. After all, anything that can tear the ocean into ribbons and vanish before breakfast deserves at least a little reverence. As the breeze settles into something soft and cool, you lie back in the sand, what's left of it, and stare at the stars with tired eyes. The hurricane is gone, but its name, Huracan, that's going to stick around. You tread slowly now, your feet sinking into red clay that clings with stubborn, sticky weight. The air smells of rot and citrus, of overripe guava crushed beneath boots, of something sweet that has long since gone sour. You're on Hispaniola. The year is 1495, and the rain hasn't stopped in weeks. Everything is soggy. The sky hangs low like a wet wool blanket draped over the island, suffocating and heavy. You trudge toward La Isabela, the first European stone settlement in the Americas, and even from a distance, you can hear the squelching, collapsing sigh of a town built on optimism and extremely poor judgment. Columbus's men, eager to impress their monarchs back home, had chosen a spot with fertile soil and ocean access, but they hadn't planned on the rainy season turning that soil into murder. Pudding. You slip once, catch yourself on a banana tree, and keep moving. The path into town is half mudslide, half soup. Historians still argue whether the landslide that would eventually bury parts of La Isabela was triggered by torrential rain alone, or worsened by the settlers' relentless deforestation and poor drainage planning. What's not debated is the outcome: disaster, soggy and suffocating. You step into the town square, or what remains of it. The main stone building, the so-called House of Columbus, still stands barely, but everything else is in various stages of sliding, leaning, or outright drowning. Thatched roofs slump like defeated hats. Walls lean on each other like drunks. And in the middle of it all, a statue of the Virgin Mary lists dangerously sideways in a pool of standing water. Rain continues. Not violently, just ... endlessly. It's not the theatrical kind of downpour, it's the grinding kind. Water drips from the eaves. It seeps between the stones. It soaks the rice. It invades boots and beds, turning dreams into mildew. You help. A young man shovel clay from the entrance of a chapel. He nods but doesn't speak. He's been doing this for days. There's something about digging out the same doorway every morning that dampens conversation. A soldier nearby curses as the entire back wall of the garrison slides down a hill like it's late for a meeting. He throws his hat to the ground. It bounces, then sinks, and then, as if the heavens have grown tired of waiting, the slope behind the village lets go. You hear at first a muffled rumble, like thunder underwater. Then the trees start to lean. The rain, incredibly, gets heavier. A moment later, the entire hillside begins to move. It's not fast, not at first, more like molasses. But this molasses weighs hundreds of tons and really wants to be horizontal. People scream. You sprint uphill, grabbing the arm of a cook who's frozen in place, her apron already soaked and clinging to her legs. Behind you, huts are swallowed whole, snapped, and folded into the moving earth. A garden vanishes. The town's food stores vanish with it. You reach high ground just in time to turn and watch half of La Isabella disappear beneath what is now a pulsing, breathing landslide. Red clay, blackened timber, fragments of pottery, everything mingled together in a slow, deadly churn. A cow, remarkably calm, floats past on a section of broken fence. One of the friars begins to pray aloud, his voice rising above the squelch. And crash, someone else mutters that the island is cursed. You're not sure which of them is right. Probably both. By dusk, the rain finally stops. The sky clears as if it had simply forgotten it was raining and remembered better things to do. The silence afterward is thick, broken only by the occasional splatter of mud dripping from what used to be a roof. You walk through what remains. People poke at the mud with sticks, hoping to find something familiar: tools, keepsakes, livestock. The chapel's bell, half buried, sticks out like a lost tooth. You try to lift it, but the suction of the mud laughs at you. Fringe tailies later told of a ghostly woman seen dancing in the storm the night before the slide, her face hidden by a shroud. O.F. dripping leaves. Locals called her La Mujer, Del Barro, the woman of the mud. She was said to warn settlers when they had overstayed nature's welcome. Judging by the state of the village, no one listened. You find a child playing in the muck, shaping tiny homes. Out of clay, as if rebuilding the town on a scale she can control. She hums a tune you don't recognize. You sit with her for a moment, shaping walls and windows, until the little house caves in on itself. She shrugs, builds another dot. As night falls, the survivors gather on the dry slope above the ruined village. Someone lights a torch. Another person begins to roast wet corn. The fire sputters, but doesn't die. A man stands and says, "We'll build it better." No one argues, but you can feel the land below your feet, still shifting, still grumbling. The red clay stains your hands. It'll take days to wash off, maybe weeks, maybe never. But you wear it now, proof that you were here when the island made its point. Somewhere below, in the buried ruins of that once proud village, the rainwater slowly settles, carrying stories and salt and silence. The sea is calm again, too calm, which is suspicious, given what you've just waded through. You're on the southern edge of what will one day be called Trinidad. It's August of 1498, and the horizon looks clean, flat, almost polite. Don't fall for it. The sky has that strange, metallic hue that makes you feel like you've stepped inside a conch shell, echoey, expectant, vibrating with some unspoken tension. Behind you is a forest of mangroves. Ahead, the open mouth of the Gulf of Paria. And deep below that, something is shifting. The ground lurches. Not a gentle rock, not a polite nudge. A heave. You stumble forward as the beach rolls under you like the deck of a ship. A distant groan follows a sound like two continents grinding their molars. Birds explode from the canopy behind you, squawking nonsense. Welcome to the Trinity earthquake. Historians still debate the exact scale. Some say magnitude 7.5 or higher, but what's agreed upon is that this quake shook the Caribbean basin hard enough to ripple the seabed. The result? A tsunami, a wall of water that does not ask permission. You dash inland as fast as your legs will go. Behind you, the ocean slinks back with a hiss, like it's winding up for something mean. Crabs scurry inland. Fish flip helplessly on exposed reef. And then, boom, a deep growl erupts from the sea itself, followed by a white line on the horizon that rushes forward faster than you ever thought water could move. A massive wave rises and curls, not elegantly, but like a bulldozer learning ballet. reach a hill just as the wave smashes the shoreline. Palm trees bow, then break. Huts disappear in an instant. Boats get flung into the treetops. You spot a goat clinging to a thatch roof, floating away like it has a plan. The water surges inland, eating everything. Then comes a second wave, smaller, but messier. It crashes into the first like a brawl between drunk gods. The chaos is total. On the high ground, survivors cluster together. Some pray, some swear. A child cries not out of fear, but because she dropped her roasted plantain into the mud. One Tano elder whispers that the sea has finally gotten tired of being walked on. Fringe versions of the story later claim this quake opened a crack so deep that smoke hissed out for weeks. Whether it's true or not, you can still smell sulfur curling up from the fissures. You help someone dig out a half-buried canoe, only to realize it's cracked clean through. Everything is. Even the rocks feel bruised. As the water recedes. It doesn't quietly slink away, it drags. Trees, livestock, cooking pots, even bits of stone altar, all pulled back toward the open ocean like souvenirs for Poseidon. The beach is unrecognizable, sandbars rearranged, lagoons redrawn, whole fishing grounds now upside down. You wander through the wreckage, sidestepping sea urchins and bits of broken shell. The landscape is full of contradictions, scorched and soaked, silenced and screaming. A starfish lies in the middle of a collapsed hut. A drum floats past, thumping softly as waves nudge it. Someone finds a net full of fish that somehow got flung uphill. They cook it. Everyone eats in silence, steam rising into a sky that finally begins to forgive. In the weeks that follow, the earth doesn't fully calm. It hiccups. It twitches. The occasional aftershock wakes you at night like a tap on the shoulder. But the rebuilding starts anyway. New shelters are woven. Ceremonies are held. People move a little farther from the beach, just in case. The sea has given its warning, and everyone got the memo. Some fringe maps will later mark this event not just as an earthquake, but as a spiritual rupture, the moment the islands reminded both the newcomers and the original stewards who really draws the boundaries here. One night, you sit by the fire with a man who swears he saw the ocean rise, like a giant's eye, and blink. He doesn't smile when he says it. You nod. Honestly, it tracks. The next morning, you wake to birdsong again. Not the full chorus, but a few brave ones. The mangroves still drip. The beach still glistens. But nothing's quite the same, because when the ground moves and the sea follows, everything resets. You pack your things slowly, glancing back once more at the altered coastline. Then you step forward, inland, toward higher ground, just in case the sea decides to blink again. The air here feels dry and quiet, like it's holding something back. You're in the Yucatan Peninsula now, near the end of the 15th century. The land is flat, dusty, and rich with ruins, great stone pyramids, ball courts, temples half choked by vines. But the people haven't disappeared. They've just moved. Inland, away from the coast, and increasingly, away from their sacred cenotes, the shimmering limestone sinkholes that once fed whole cities. And that's a problem. You crouch at the edge of one such cenote now, peering into water that used to be full to the brim, alive with fish and offerings of jade. But today, it's a puddle at best, cracked edges, exposed limestone. Even the frogs have given up. This wasn't supposed to happen. Historians still argue whether the late-century droughts in the Yucatan were caused by regional climate shifts or deforestation from temple construction and agriculture. What's agreed upon is this: something major dried up the lifeblood of the Maya. And when your lifeblood is literal water, that's the kind of problem you can't meditate your way out of. You climb down a vine-covered trail to another cenote, hoping. for better news. But it's the same story. A sad little pool reflecting a sky that won't cry. You pass stone altars decorated with feathers, bone shards, and one very creepy obsidian figurine that seems to be smirking at you. You decide not to touch it. Some fringe accounts suggest the Maya responded to the vanishing water with increasingly intense rituals. At one ceremony, it said a priest tossed in an entire golden mask, an unthinkable offering, meant to convince. The gods, they were serious this time. Others say the gods had gone somewhere else entirely and weren't taking calls. You walk through the remains of a ceremonial plaza. The stone relief still tells stories, gods with maize growing from there. Skulls, jaguars devouring stars, water cascading from open mouths. It's all so wet. A cruel reminder. It's like painting ice cream murals inside a sauna. You meet a group of locals gathered around a cracked well. They're digging deeper, chasing water like it's hiding. One elder shows you a shell carved with water glyphs. It used to sing, she says. Now it's just quiet. Even the plants seem confused. The maize is stunted. The cacao trees are sulking. You pass a whole grove of agave that looks like it's giving up on being spiky. The earth underfoot crumbles when you step on it, not in a soft, welcoming way. More like a houseplant that's been ignored too long. Nearby, a stone carving depicts Chak, the rain god, wielding his lightning axe. He's frowning. Understandable. His temples are cracked. His offerings have dried up. He's not angry. He's bored. And that might be worse. The Maya haven't vanished. They've shifted. Inland towns grow more complex. Smaller ceremonial sites pop up. People adjust. But their sacred relationship with water has changed forever. It's no longer an abundant gift. It's a test. You hike through a thicket of dry brush, passing more cenotes, each one a little shallower than the last. At one, a boy drops a pebble and waits. It doesn't splash. It clicks. You wince. Some fringe-tailies claim a great snake beneath. The Yucatan coiled too tightly during this time, squeezing the life out of the cenotes as punishment for some forgotten transgression. Whether myth or metaphor, it's hard not to picture a parched serpent twitching underfoot, refusing to let the rain flow until someone apologizes properly. You stop at a half-buried altar, just barely peeking through the dirt. You brush it off. Gently. The glyphs are eroded, but recognizable. A water glyph, upside down. A frog with an open mouth. And next to it, what looks like a human eye -closed dot as you stand. Clouds finally gather overhead. Not the fluffy, Instagram filter kind. The heavy kind, ominous, serious. Everyone around you stops and looks up. One drop, then another. You hold your breath, but no storm comes. Just a false start, a tease. The locals don't curse. They just go back to their work, reinforcing catch basins, adjusting channels, moving precious buckets from shade to sun. That's the thing with long droughts. They don't make you panic. They wear you down. You find a priest painting on a wall bright blue strokes, waves, rain, smiling gods. It's hopeful, delusional, or both. He offers you the brush. You add a small bird to the edge of the storm. Maybe that'll help. Night falls dry and warm. The stars shimmer without shame. And the wind carries dust. Instead of mist out, you lie down near a shallow cenote, its surface smooth as obsidian. Staring up, you imagine what this sky looked like when the water danced below, catching constellations in its reflection. Now it's just stone holding memory. The earth creaks gently as it cools. And far off, a toad croaks lonely, hopeful, perhaps practicing for the day the rain actually returns. You wake to a chill that doesn't make sense. It's summer, or it should be, but the air tastes like iron and frost. Your breath clouds as you sit up under a strange gray sky, and even the birdsong sounds off, like it's been pitched down. Half a key. You're somewhere in the upper Midwest, now what will one day be Ohio or Pennsylvania. But this morning, in the year 1499, it feels like you've wandered into someone else's season. The crops agree with you. Corn stalks lean, stunted and confused. Beans shrivel on the vine. The squash leaves curl like clenched fists. A farmer squats by a wilted field, rubbing his palms together not from cold, but from indecision. What do you plant when the sun forgets how to warm? This isn't just a bad season. It's the beginning of a long, dim spell, a cooling event at the tail end of the 15th century. Historians still debate what caused it. Some point to massive volcanic eruptions in South America or Southeast Asia, possibly even Alaska. Others say it was a quiet solar minimum or a global reshuffling of ocean currents. Whatever the cause, the result is clear. Skies turned dull, summers turned sour, and harvests failed more than they succeeded. They called it much later a volcanic winter. But in this moment, all you know is that the tomatoes have refused to blush, and the rivers are colder than they ought to be. You trudge through a village where smoke rises not in thin trails, but in thick, desperate columns. Fires burn all day, just to keep the chill off. People huddle inside bark-insulated shelters, and the smell of roasting pine nuts and burnt roots lingers in the air. A child wears a tunic lined with goose feathers, an unusual sight for July. The local healer tells. Her calendrical stone has gone numb. She's stopped trusting the stars, she says. They look the same, but they lie now. One fringe tale claims that during this time, frost bit the noses off maize spirits carved into temple walls. You'd laugh, except you can see her breath. Gather with a group near the fire, where a young man speaks of the last eclipse and how the moon turned rust red for hours. That's when the weather started changing, he says, matter of fact. The sky lost its appetite. You nod. It certainly seems like the sun is tired or shy. Animals are acting strangely too. You watch a bear shuffle through a field of ice-crusted mushrooms, blinking like it forgot what month it is. A flock of geese flies overhead southbound. In August, premature migration, like someone flipped the seasons by accident. And the people adapt. Sort of. Rituals are moved indoors. Offerings are buried deeper. No one relies on the same planting calendar anymore. Everyone guesses. Hope becomes a kind of science. You help one family set up mirrored stone slabs to reflect sunlight onto their squasha, desperate little trick that might give him a few more weeks. The mother offers you a stew of boiled cattail roots in return. It tastes like determination and old socks, but you eat every bite. By mid-afternoon, the temperature hasn't budged. Still chilly. The sky remains a soft, unwavering pewter gray, like someone painted over it and forgot the stars. You pass a stone sundial rendered useless, its shadow frozen in the same position since dawn. Some scholars believe this event marked the beginning of a broader pattern, the Little Ice, age that would haunt agriculture and daily life across much of the northern hemisphere for centuries. But here, in this moment, you just want a warm night. As the sun dips behind the trees, still a weak orange smear, more suggestion than sphere. You join a circle of people gathered around a low fire. They're singing a song that doesn't ask for warmth or rain. It just asks for memory. Remember the warmth, it says. Remember what berries used to taste like. Remember sun on bare shoulders. The youngest child in the circle offers you a carved acorn. This one's for luck, she says. You thank her. You don't say it out loud, but you're not sure luck has much say in this kind of cold. As the stars return dimmer than usual, but still faithful, you stretch out on a bed of pine needles, wrapped in 2 cloaks and one ridiculous. fur hat. Your breath forms little clouds in rhythm with your thoughts. You hear a wolf call, far off long, lonely, lovely. And then the rustle of deer hooves crunching frost beneath an oak. You look up one last time. The sky is darker now, but less hostile. Maybe the frost is lifting, or maybe you're just used to it. Either way, you sleep beneath the final chapter of this strange century, wrapped in silence, carved acorns, and the promise that even dim skies eventually break dot. So now, here you are. You've traveled through fire and flood, through quakes that shook entire rivers into reverse, and rains that buried cities in silence. You've walked beneath sky-splitting meteors, over cracked cornfields, through ghost villages and volcanic ash. You've seen the ocean rise not once, not twice, but again and again, unimpressed by your presence, unbothered by your plans. And yet, you also saw people light fires in the ruins. You saw them plant seeds in scorched earth. You heard songs rise over landslide-soaked hillsides and watched dances swirl beneath smoking skies. Not because they weren't afraid, but because they kept going anyway. That's the strange beauty of it all, isn't it? These disasters, these ancient natural tantrums, didn't erase the people. They reshaped them, pushed them inland, made them chant louder, taught them to read the clouds, listen for silence, and always leave a little room in the canoe for uncertainty. Now, let the imagery begin to fade. Let the fires die down in your mind, the water recede, the frost melt from the stone. Let the mountains still, the volcanoes sleep, the winds go quiet, and let your breathing slow with them, gently and deeply. Because the disasters are done, for tonight, you're safe now. The world outside can wait till morning dot, so close your eyes. And if the ground rumbles a little in your dreams, don't worry. It's just the earth remembering you're here.